All right. Hey guys, it's Odette, run coach, personal trainer, sports podiatrist. I wanted to talk about breaking my ankle. It's been 2 weeks and a lot of people wanted to know what happened. Also interested in my rehab as a podiatrist. So I'm going to tell you what happened. Well, I was training a client up at the park and it started to piss down with the rain, and I was like, there's a shelter straight ahead everyone's running to, and my head says, let's go to your car. So we ran over to the car, and as I stopped to open the door, there was a metal kind of plate that covers the Optus box, the electrical cords underneath the road. I don't know what they call it. Anyway, so as I opened the door, I slipped on that. So what my foot would have done was go this way, all right, to try and stop the slide. So I was kind of holding on, my foot sliding, trying to hold on, and then, so that busted the plafond. I've got a fracture, so of this little bit here of the your shin bone, which is called your tibia, okay, and you have these deltoid ligaments that were stretched during that particular time, and then they pull on that part of the bone and fracture it. So that's what happened there. And then once my foot couldn't kind of hold on anymore, it then supinated and flipped under. So then the tibia on the other side, that got fractured here. So again, the ligaments, I have a high ankle sprain along with that. The ligaments got torn here, which actually hold the tibia and fibula together, and it fractured there. So it's called a Weber B fracture. Or places you would usually see this injury would be like ice hockey and things like that, as the foot, kind of stops, pivots, and then actually supinates, and you get breaks on both sides. So that's the lovely injury that I got just trying to open the door of my friend's car. I sat there in the pouring rain crying like that, and he quickly noticed I wasn't getting in the car and found me just there saturated, holding my my foot in complete kind of shock as well. So all the thoughts and feelings about my job is teaching people how to run, and I love demonstrating, so I'm a very visual person. So I knew that I wasn't going to be teaching people how to run for a while. A lot of my photos, you'll see I'm always jumping up in the air. I love plyometrics. I love doing all of that stuff with my body and pushing my limits. That wasn't going to be available to me anymore. So as well, my influencer stuff was affected. So all of these thoughts about income, work, how was I going to, get through this? And my client's like, are you okay? And I'm just like hyperventilating, crying, not talking. And, once I was able to just take a second and breathe, he's like, let me take you to the hospital. And I'm like, I'm not going to the emergency room at 7 p.m. at night just to stay there till 1 a.m. in the morning, because I'm not an emergency, and I would just be sitting there in pain basically for hours. So I said, take me home. I got a compression bandage. So any injuries, most of the time, unless it's like an open fracture, this was a closed, it's a closed fracture. It's also in alignment, so it's not malaligned either. So I went home and I used the basics: rest, ice, compression, elevation. And the next day I wrote myself a little script for an X-ray and ultrasound. So yeah, strapped it up, used some ice, used some painkillers, and elevated that foot. And then the next morning I found out I had the 2 fractures and the 2 torn ligaments. So basically told my work, I will not be your run coach, and no more. Well, for at least 3 to 6 months. And this is really scary. Coming up to Christmas, I have a child, a 14-year-old that doesn't see any signs of not growing like an absolute weed, so he requires a lot of food, a lot of clothes, a lot of upkeep, and I may be smiling, but these things are very stressful in that situation. Thankfully, I did have my 4 weeks holiday coming up for work because I had another surgery planned. So I have those paid holidays coming up. Still, I need to recover within these 4 weeks. So basically now it's been 2 weeks. I have had this injury. The swelling was insane. My whole foot was blackened and swollen. So a lot of blackness and swelling around here. So bruising, a lot of swelling at the top of the foot. You really have to keep that compression on, keep it elevated. I've been using crutches. I haven't got a cast. So some of you like, why didn't you get a cast if you've got a broken leg? So you can use a cast. They probably would have given me one if I went to hospital, or I knew that I could get myself into a boot. But the swelling was quite bad for the first 10 days, that basically all I've been using is compression, keeping off it, so no loading or impact whatsoever. And then I used a little air cast just to kind of hold it together, and it really did help support that high ankle sprain for me, and not too tight because there is a fracture in the bone, so you don't want to compress that. So that's what I've been using. Personally, when you're an athlete, and I'm used to doing about 20 Ks a day in physical activity. So I'm used to weightlifting, I'm used to running my clients out to the park and back. I'm used to doing all my own stuff. So I went from doing all of that energy and eating a hell of a lot of food to I do around 2 Ks in total throughout the whole day now. So, and that's on crutches, and that's mostly just my right leg, and I can feel the muscle tone. You can probably see there, muscle tone is very different already after 2 weeks from the right to left leg. So I'm going to have to be very mindful with my rehab of how to balance out the body. So what do? I went to Kmart and I've got some other stuff, obviously fitness gear because I'm a trainer, and I moved everything out of my lounge room and set up a space for me to be able to work out. I'm in a small home, a 1-bedroom unit, and I needed space where I could walk around in crutches, but also do my fitness routine. So for any of you that are used to that amount of exercise, you've got to be mindful as an athlete recovering. Your whole metabolism, your whole hormonal system, like you're used to giving yourself the dopamine, the adrenaline, the painkillers that naturally flood your body when you exercise. And if you're not kind of keeping up with that, it's very easy to get depressed and lose your muscle tone, lose your identity. And, people are like, well, if you're a fitness fanatic, if or you're addicted to fitness, well, yeah, you may be, but everybody needs their at least 30 minutes of exercise per day, and I'm not putting any pressure on my legs. So I'm saying to athletes, like, if you have an injury, don't just stop altogether. What other body parts can you use? How can you still stay active without doing what your preferred activity used to be? So for me, I love weights, but I know that I can do everything from the knees up now. So I've just got some little blocks. I pop my knees on so my feet can rest at the back. I do, kind of kettlebell swings, anything where I can hinge at the hip, because I know the biggest muscles of the body, the glutes, the hamstrings, all of that, I want them to work, so I keep my metabolism up and I get more bang for my buck. So I'm still using everything up from the knee up, and trying to rehab as well by rolling out the sides of my leg that I'm using all the time. So my glute med, my IT band is suffering a lot from the load and just hopping on one leg all the time. Also, the arches of my feet, they're getting sore because I'm hopping so much and I'm using all the intricate muscles of the foot. So I have to also make sure I rehab and look after the opposing leg. So these are some of the things that I've had to face in the last 2 weeks while recovering from my broken ankle, my Weber B fracture. I hope this information helps anybody suffering from the same thing. I will be seeing a surgeon next week and bringing him new x-rays, because after 2 weeks of, usually 2 weeks after fracturing something, you can see the fracture much more. You can gain better insight into the injury, what's healing, what's not, so the swelling isn't there anymore, and there's kind of some calcification that goes along with it. So 2 weeks after is a good kind of time frame to get another x-ray done. I will be taking that to him. If there is any widening in the space between these bones, that's when I would need surgery to actually pull these two bones back together. So they would put a rod or a screw, sounds horrible, right? Through the outside of the fibula all the way through the tibia, a plate along here, and just hold these two together. So hopefully, please, there is no widening, because I don't want to go to surgery. I don't want to go into surgery. I want to be able to jump again. I want to be positive and optimistic that my ligament in here, my inferior anterior talofibular ligament, I think that's it. May have forgotten. Ooh, it's been 2 years since uni. And anyway, so I'm hoping that has healed, okay? 50%, they saw it was probably 50% has torn, but I'm hoping that we're seeing some healing there and I don't need surgery. Anyway, I'm gonna come back, talk to you guys about some of the rehab that I'm going to be doing, and also showing you the little exercises I do from home that you can do too, to keep yourself and your body moving forward, staying positive, and I will see you next time. Bye.